Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be discussing Chapter 12 and professional boundaries that you, as clinician and school counselor, will need to focus on when working with clients or students. For starters, I would like to talk about professional boundaries, which are the lines of demarcation between clinician and client as they come together as in a work-focused relationship. It's very important to make sure that you're focusing on your client and what they need, making sure that you're thinking about their feelings, their body language, what they are sharing, and walking them through that. When you're focusing on their needs, it's important not to disclose personal information, which we will get to in a little bit in further detail, and making sure that we are only focusing on them as your client or student and guiding them through the situation that they may be encountering. In that, you do form a bond with your client, which is important, but at the same time comes with boundaries in itself, making sure that it is a working alliance and a working relationship versus a friendship. Sometimes when you bond with a clinician so comfortably, it can be very easy for them to confuse the boundaries or not understand what their limits or the respect is between the relationship because it does not go beyond that session unless there is a crisis and they reach out to you on a work email or things like that in a professional manner. Moving forward to disclosure of personal information, limited amount of information shared with the client is very important because you yourself are making it about them. When you are encountering self-disclosure, which is when the clinician sharing demographic information or personal experience with the client, it is with purpose. It is with the meaning that you are trying to either get them to open up a little bit more or build an empathetic relationship. Moving forward with information sharing, sharing information about oneself as it relates to a generic situation that a client may be undergoing, saying things like, yes, I understand I was once in your shoes, or I am here for you, and I felt a similar feeling when I had a situation as yours. And then moving forward with modeling, sharing information that is relevant towards the situation that a client is undergoing. For example, if you yourself have faced any sort of stress or anxiety when it comes to the workplace, and your client or your student comes to you and says, hey, I'm feeling a lot of stress and anxiety when it comes to focusing on so many things at the same time, you yourself can say something like, yes, I understand that. I was in your shoes and it can be very hard, but you will get through it. Moving forward to empathy building, if experiencing the same scenario as your client, you can offer the self-disclosure as I was in your shoes once too tactic without giving detailed information. So as previously mentioned before with the modeling tactic, it is important to make sure that the conversation is still about them, your client, but it is good to form that relationship and that bond by sharing information like, yes, I totally understand. I was in a similar situation at some point. Moving forward with examining the moment, sharing personal thoughts while a client is sharing something like saying things like, I felt sad for you in the moment that you were sharing. It's important to let them know that you're not just here listening, that you are feeling a sad moment or you felt happy for them in a moment that they shared with you. It's important to share those emotions because clients will then feel more inclined to share more with you and give you more information as to what was going on in the situation. Moving forward with culture and self-disclosure, a culturally diverse client may not open up, self-disclose, until you, the helping professional, self-disclose first. Thus, to many minority clients, a therapist who expresses his or her thoughts and feelings may be better received in a counseling situation. So, what does that mean? This might be something we face more with students, but when seeing that maybe the student isn't really opening up with you and you're having trouble getting through to them, self-disclosing and saying, growing up, I faced similar encounters with as you, and I struggled in this, and I don't know if you've ever felt that, but I just wanted to share with you. Have you ever felt something like that, or has that been something that's happened to you? Just to kind of slowly weave your way in because every client and student is different. Moving forward with what to consider when you're self-disclosing, when you're talking about yourself or when you're sharing an experience is why am I considering self-disclosure before you actually do it? Why am I using self-disclosure in this moment? It's something that you relate to. is it in the client's best interest? Is this going to help the situation, or is this just because I feel like I need to get something off my chest? And how might this help our relationship? So, all of these questions are important to consider right before you're about to say something or self disclose something, because oftentimes clients find themselves being the therapist for their therapist when sharing, when the therapist is sharing too much information about themselves. Moving forward with planned contact outside the office. When meeting purposefully with clients outside of the customary meeting place, it is important to be careful that the rules are clear and that boundaries are, though flexible, will still be defined. So, what that means is if you and your students or you and your clients say, hey, we live around in the same city, there may be a chance we might bump into each other at a grocery store, at a park, or on the street. How would we want to go about that? And you always want to make sure that whatever it is, it's always still setting the boundaries and making sure that you are not crossing those boundaries. Are we going to say hi? Are we going to acknowledge that we see each other? Do you want to say a hi and that's it? But making sure that that's established. It's definitely optional. It's not necessary. But if you and your students or your clients live around the same city, it may be worth doing and discussing. Lastly, unplanned contact outside of the office. Define what the protocols are, like we just mentioned, and always move forward with what makes the client feel more comfortable. Some people are very shy, and the therapy sessions may be on Zoom. So, feeling like they need to say hi outside of the office or outside of the sessions can be a lot of pressure and could affect the relationship as well, which is very important to make sure that you discuss if that is the case with your clients. And now we're going to move forward with Christina, who will continue on with chapter 12.
Continuing with chapter 12, we have legally mandated boundary intrusions, which is when the clinician is obligated by a court to visit clients' homes for safety reasons. So they're either posing a risk to themselves or to others, and clinicians, as protective service workers, must intervene. Boundary intrusions often occur after intensive supports have already been provided to the client, and they serve as a life-saving measure to be able to protect the vulnerable or ill members from any abuse or neglect. Gift giving and receiving is also something to consider between the client and clinician relationship. In some situations, it represents messages about the relationship between the clients and the clinician. So sometimes clients may be trying to use gift giving to exert some sort of control over the clinician, or some clients believe that gift giving is how they earn love. And there may be some clients that are uncomfortable with both gift giving and receiving. So it's important to keep that into consideration. Using gifts as symbolic messages. Sometimes clinicians can use the gift giving practice as a discussion point to discuss the meanings or intentions behind the gift and why the client has acted upon it. Small gifts can be sometimes considered appropriate, such as a card for a holiday, but you want to decline gifts in a respectful and courteous manner. And keep in mind that accepting gifts can compromise clinical judgment, especially gifts that may be expensive. And you also want to consider how culture influences gift giving. So, for example, in some cultures, gift giving might be a sign of respect after somebody has already provided a service to them. Use of touch. Sometimes touch is considered a norm when meeting others, such as handshakes or hugs. But use of touch can also be used by exploitative clinicians that may be trying to take advantage of the power imbalance. You also want to be careful in the use of touch because some clients might have experienced trauma and they may reject any form of touch, or some clients might feel that touch is a way that they feel cared about, and so you just want to be careful when navigating touch, particularly with traumatized clients. However, you want to make sure that you are understanding the policies of your workplace when it comes to touch, and also the cultural considerations that can come into play, such as in religious settings, or for some religions, such as the Muslim community. Even a handshake between a male clinician and a female client might be extremely inappropriate, or even between clients and clinicians in the Jewish Orthodox communities. We also have sexual attraction, which can occur, but romantic and sexual attraction is forbidden by ethical codes and is a criminal offense in some states. If sexual attraction does occur, you want to communicate that with your supervisor, and communicate any inappropriate sexual behaviors that are being exhibited. As clinicians, you should never engage in any sexual behaviors or sexual attraction. Maintain any documentation of inappropriate behaviors. And if you are addressing this with your clients, you want to make sure that boundaries are set and that you're doing so in a clinical context. Clinicians should also consider their own behaviors, such as professionalism, the way that they dress, or the way that they're engaging in these types of conversations with clients. Limit setting. When talking about boundaries and setting limits, it should always be client and clinician centered, because both parties should feel safe and comfortable enough in order to work productively. Even though the clinical setting should be client centered, boundaries should be considered for both parties. Non-judgmentalism should not allow clients to engage in any inappropriate behaviors. As clinicians, we want to come with a non-judgmental mindset, but it should never allow the clients to it should not allow the clients to cross our boundaries. And limit setting also helps clients learn self-containment, which also helps benefit them in their relationships outside of the clinical setting. Boundaries should always be appropriate and flexible in order to be able to maintain warm and trustworthy relationships between client and clinician that are based on integrity and respect.